Tonight, we're learning new details in the death of legendary actor Gene Hackman. Newly released body camera video showing New Mexico sheriff's deputies arriving on the scene and discovering the bodies of the Oscar winner and his wife.
Sheriff's deputies releasing this body camera video, including interviews with a witness and initial fears that the cause of death could have been carbon monoxide poisoning.
We've struggled to release as much information as we have. There may be a press release that comes out this afternoon. The search warrant was executed just before 10 o'clock p.m. last night.
Gene Hackman's daughters have reportedly hired a private investigator. The late actor's children act upon chilling new murder theory. Hackman's family has reportedly grown frustrated with a lack of concrete answers from authorities. A newly released body cam footage showed Betsy Arakawa's hairstylist making shocking revelations about a stalker. This has given wind to a new theory that the Hackmans may have been murdered. Following this, Hackman's daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, have taken matters into their own hands, which is likely to change the course of the investigation.
All I can say is they have been deceased for quite a while. That's a determination that's better suited for OMI and the experts, but it sounds like they had been deceased for a while, and I don't want to take a guess in reference to how long that was.
Hackman's other daughter, Leslie Ann Allen, had previously claimed that her father was in good health before his death last month. However, investigators have now proven that her assessment of his health was completely incorrect. During an interview shortly after Hackman and his wife Betsy were found dead, Allen claimed that her father was in good health and showed no signs of any health problems. There was no indication that there was any problem with his health, Allen revealed. He liked to do Pilates and yoga, and he continued to do that several times a week, so he was in good health. Allen also admitted that she hadn't seen or spoken to Hackman or Arakawa for a couple of months because she lives hundreds of miles away in California, but she insisted that she remained close with her father and that everything was good. "We were close. I hadn't talked to them for a couple months, but everything was normal and everything was good," she said. However, after a full investigation into the deaths of Hackman and Arakawa, experts determined that Allen's assessment of Hackman's health was completely incorrect. Not only was Hackman not in good health, as Allen claimed, but Chief Medical Investigator Dr. Heather Jarrell actually determined that the former actor was in a very poor state of health. "Mr. Hackman showed evidence of advanced Alzheimer's disease," Jarrell said. "He was in a very poor state of health. He had significant heart disease, and I think ultimately that's what resulted in his death." While Allen hadn't spoken to her father in months, it does not sound like his health issues were new either. Jarrell's autopsy revealed that Hackman suffered from severe heart disease, including multiple surgical procedures involving the heart, evidence of prior heart attacks, and severe changes of the kidneys due to chronic high blood pressure. Needless to say, it's obvious that Allen was incorrect when she claimed that her father was in good health and showed no signs of health problems before his death. The actor's older daughter, Elizabeth, wants a lot to be done in the wake of her father's death. Among them, that the actor's dog be buried with his wife, among other legal demands. New body cam footage from the day after the Oscar winner, 95, and his wife, Betsy Hackman, were found dead at their New Mexico property last month shows the late actor's daughter ensuring that the final resting place of their Kelpie mix Zinna is alongside Betsy, 65. In the February 27th body cam footage, obtained from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office as part of the Hackman investigation, an officer calls Elizabeth, 62, from inside a police vehicle to ask what to do with the body of the beloved dog, who was found dead in the home alongside the late couple. Initially, Elizabeth, the middle child of Gene's 3 kids, asks the officer if cremation is an option for Zinna. Once the animal control officer confirms that it is, she tells him, "I'm thinking of cremating the dog and burying it with Betsy." "And," she later requested, "if the dog is wearing a collar, could you save that for me?" Another body cam video captured outside the couple's residence on February 26th depicts a dog trainer who knew the couple recalling how much the actor and the classical pianist, who had 2 other dogs, Bear and Nikita, in addition to Zinna, loved their pets. The Hackman's estate has been granted a temporary block on all photos, videos, and police body cam footage depicting the interior of their residence. "They were dog nuts," said Joey Padilla, the owner of a local pet daycare and training facility, Santa Fe Tails, who told authorities he had previously worked with the couple's dogs. "You can see, there's toys everywhere around their property," he added in the footage. "They loved their dogs." Before marrying Betsy in 1991, Gene welcomed his 3 children with his first wife, Faye Maltese, Christopher, 63, Elizabeth, 61, and Leslie, 57. Following his death, daughters Elizabeth and Leslie, as well as the late actor's granddaughter Annie Hackman, shared a statement with People magazine. "It is with great sadness that we announce the passing of our father, Gene Hackman, and his wife, Betsy," the statement read. "He was loved and admired by millions around the world for his brilliant acting career, but to us he was always just Dad and Grandpa. We will miss him sorely and are devastated by the loss." As mentioned earlier, the causes of Gene and Betsy's deaths were revealed in March, weeks after they were found dead. The pianist died from hantavirus, a flu-like virus linked to rodent droppings, while her actor husband died a week later from a combination of severe heart disease, high blood pressure, and advanced Alzheimer's disease. Meanwhile, Zina likely died of dehydration and starvation, Santa Fe County Animal Control previously revealed. Padilla, who took care of the couple's surviving dogs, Bear and Nikita, following their deaths, previously told the Associated Press that the late Kelpie mix was always attached to Betsy at the hip, and it was a beautiful relationship. Zina went from being a returned shelter dog to this incredible companion under Betsy's hand, he added at the time. More unsettling details about the deaths of Hackman and his wife, Arakawa, are emerging. According to recently released body cam footage featuring Arakawa's hairdresser, Gene Hackman, and his late wife, allegedly had 2 unsettling interactions with a stranger in the weeks leading up to their deaths. The alleged interactions were described in detail by Arakawa's hairdresser, Christopher, in body camera footage posted by Fox News on Monday, March 24th. In the interview with New Mexico authorities, Christopher described his deceased client as frazzled and said that she had allegedly expressed concern about being followed by the same strange man on 2 separate occasions while out with her husband in Santa Fe. "She mentioned to me that there was a man that had parked outside of their gate and followed them," Christopher told law enforcement, "on 2 separate occasions. One occasion is when they went to White Rock. They went and had lunch there, and the guy followed them from the parking lot outside of their gated community, followed them all the way to White Rock." She said, "Christopher, I'm surprised that security didn't know how he got there, because when we left, I noticed that this car had followed us from the residence to White Rock." Arakawa told Christopher that the man who allegedly followed them pulled out a folder of photos of her husband and wanted him to sign them. The hairdresser noted that the alleged behavior was strange because Santa Fe is not a place of paparazzi and stuff, and said that Arakawa confronted the man. She said she approached him and said, "I told him he needed to have more respect," recalled Christopher. He also claimed that she said the same man followed the deceased couple to a different location on another occasion, offering them a bottle of wine, which Christopher says they declined. The final days of the 2-time Oscar winner and his classical pianist wife have been under scrutiny ever since New Mexico authorities found Hackman and Arakawa's bodies, along with 1 deceased dog, in their $3.8 million Santa Fe home on February 26th. According to activity from his pacemaker, Hackman most likely died on February 18th from cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's as a contributing factor. The New Mexico office of the medical investigator initially determined that Arakawa most likely died of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare and potentially fatal disease carried by rodents, a week earlier than her husband on February 11th. But Dr. Josiah Child, Hackman's doctor, recently claimed that Arakawa called him on February 12th regarding an echocardiogram for her husband, a full day after her estimated time of death. "Mrs. Hackman didn't die on February 11th because she called my clinic on February 12th, Child told the Daily Mail on Sunday, March 16th. Child claims that Arakawa also canceled an appointment on February 10th, saying that Hackman was sick. The appointment was allegedly rescheduled for February 12th, but per child, Arakawa never showed up. She did not show any symptoms of respiratory distress, he told the tabloid. The appointment wasn't for anything related to hantavirus. We tried calling her a couple of times with no reply. When public records reveal sensitive details, the desire for privacy collides with the need for government transparency. The recent deaths of Hackman and his wife Betsy have sparked investigations, drawn international media attention, and put an important question in front of a New Mexico judge. Do privacy concerns in this case outweigh the public's right to have full access to documents, photographs, videos, and body cam footage created during official investigations into the Hackman's February deaths? Typically, New Mexico's Freedom of Information Law, the Inspection of Public Records Act, passed by the state legislature in 1993, would permit members of the media and other interested parties to obtain copies of law enforcement documents and images generated by such inquiries. In the case of the Hackman, records reside with both the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, headquartered near Santa Fe, and the Office of the Medical Investigator, which is in Albuquerque and is part of the University of New Mexico School of Medicine. The records would usually be released in due course, with restrictions on how the material could be viewed. These are spelled out in IPIRA and are designed, in part, to prevent images of death and violence from being used in ways that are exploitative. While the state legislature has declared it to be New Mexico's public policy that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of public officers and employees. And the state Supreme Court has ruled that the citizen's right to know is the rule and secrecy is the exception. IPRA allows some types of records to be kept from the public and stipulates that certain information can be removed from records before they are disclosed. Among the exceptions are some classes of information found in law enforcement records, such as medical records and images of death. Before releasing law enforcement records, an agency may redact or digitally obscure photos or videos that depict images of a deceased person, of intimate body parts, or of great bodily harm. While IPRA blocks the release of such sensitive photos, a member of the public may view these photographic or video records at a police station or sheriff's office. Making copies of records containing these types of images is prohibited. In this way, records containing sensitive images are protected from public dissemination, but not completely sealed off from public inspection. The Hackman estate wants to entirely block access to photographic records of the late couple. On March 11th, the estate filed a petition for injunction, asking the First Judicial District Court in Santa Fe County to prohibit the Sheriff's Office and OMI from releasing any investigatory evidence related to the case, including all reports, photographs, and video footage, arguing that such a release would violate the constitutional right to privacy of the decedents and their families. On March 17th, the court granted the estate relief, putting in place a temporary restraining order blocking the release of photographic and video evidence of the deceased individuals, their deceased pet dog, the interior of the home, and the OMI investigative reports. The court is scheduled to hear the petition for a permanent injunction at the end of this month. If the judge finds that constitutional privacy protections prevent disclosure of any of the investigative records named by the Hackman estate, the records would be permanently exempt from inspection under the "as otherwise provided by law" exception to IPRA and barred from release to the public. The sensitive images the Hackman estate seeks to keep sealed are likely exempt from public inspection under IPRA's law enforcement records exception. However, if the injunction is granted, it would prohibit the disclosure of a broad range of other public records, including all reports related to the investigation. It appears that this is the first time a New Mexico court is looking at whether public records should be withheld from disclosure for constitutional privacy reasons. Similar requests have come up elsewhere. In 2018, in a case called Lee v. City of Seattle, the Court of Appeals of Washington held that the release of the death scene photos from the police investigative file of musician Kurt Cobain's death would violate the family's and Cobain's substantive due process rights under the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. It's understandable why the family of Hackman and Arakawa would seek to prevent the release of sensitive private information and images. In enacting the law enforcement records exception to IPRA, the legislature clearly contemplated these privacy concerns by restricting the ability to release or reproduce sensitive images in public law enforcement records. However, it is not so clear whether autopsy photos have the same protection. Autopsy photos would likely only be considered law enforcement records, as defined by IPRA, and subject to these same protections if they are collected as part of a police investigation. The Hackman estate's request to sidestep IPRA comes at a time when the law itself has been under pressure from people in New Mexico who want to weaken it. During the 2025 New Mexico legislative session, lawmakers introduced failed bills that, among other things, would have created hourly fees for commercial records requests and blocked the release of much police body cam footage filmed on private property. Another bill, which also failed, would have explicitly made confidential photographic images taken by medical investigators. One of the 20th century's greatest actors, Hackman's career spanned more than 40 years and a variety of roles, from tough guy parts to comedic turns, playing heroes, villains, and one iconic sports coach in ways that captivated audiences. Any selection is inevitably going to be missing someone's absolute favorite, whether it's as Lex Luthor in Superman, the private eye in Night Moves, or the sadistic sheriff in Unforgiven. But everyone's got to start somewhere. Here are a range of his can't-miss performances, whether you're revisiting them as a fan or lucky enough to just be discovering them. The first one has to be The French Connection of 1971. Jimmy Popeye Doyle, the narcotics detective at the center of William Friedkin's film, is perhaps Hackman's most defining performance. Cold, amoral, relentless, and obsessed. He's a bad good cop, and you can't take your eyes off him. The characterization virtually defines the attitude of the French Connection, Roger Greenspun wrote in 1971 for the New York Times. Hard-nosed, pork-pie-hatted, vulgar, a tough cop in the latest measure of a fine tradition, he exists neither to rise nor to fall, to excite neither pity nor terror, but to function. Then there is The Conversation of 1974. Just 3 years after The French Connection, and in the post-Watergate haze, Francis Ford Coppola gave audiences a paranoid masterpiece in The Conversation. Hackman is Harry Call, an audio surveillance expert in San Francisco who stumbles upon a murder plot. Consumed with guilt, trauma, and suspicion, Harry and the movie are a product of the time where neither God nor technology seems equipped to save us from ourselves. It's also, as Roger Ebert wrote in 2001, simply a taut, intelligent thriller. 12 years later came Hoosiers in 1986. In David Anspaugh's Hoosiers, Hackman plays Norman Dale, a basketball coach who failed at the college level and gets another shot at a tiny Indiana high school. It's a movie about second chances and starting over, and it's widely considered one of the all-time great sports films, perhaps best remembered for that inspirational speech. But it works because Hackman gives Dale the complexity of a lived life, where failure and hope don't have to be at odds. Then, in 1996, came The Birdcage, Mike Nichols's remake of the 1978 French farce La Cage aux Folles. Is not a Hackman-centric movie, but it does show another great side of him as part of a comedic ensemble. He plays a conservative senator unhappy about his daughter's choice of partner in the aftermath of a scandal when he's trying to appease his right-wing supporters with a so-called family values agenda that does not include humanizing queer relationships. He and Diane Wiest make a feast out of Elaine May's script. Towards the end of his career, Hackman appeared in The Royal Tenenbaums in 2001. There are few more delightful sequences than watching Hackman as Royal Tenenbaum, the disbarred lawyer trying to reconnect with his estranged children through an elaborate lie, taking his grandsons out for a day of mischief. Riding on the back of a trash truck, go-karting through New York, crossing the street on a don't walk sign, shoplifting milk at the bodega, throwing water balloons at passing taxis, set to Paul Simon's Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. Well, that, and his chosen epitaph in this Wes Anderson film, died tragically rescuing his family from the wreckage of a destroyed, sinking battleship. Acting was everything to Gene Hackman. The late actor was unwaveringly dedicated to his craft, but found certain parts of the gig frustrating. Director Barry Sonnenfeld recalled this to BBC News in an interview published on Saturday, March 1st. Among the stuff Hackman could do without were the hours he would often have to spend in the hair and makeup trailer, said Sonnenfeld, who directed Hackman in the 1995 crime comedy Get Shorty alongside John Travolta and Danny DeVito. He had this conflict, the director recalled, in that he was this brilliant actor but he hated the tropes of what it took to act in movies. The late acting icon Sonnenfeld told BBC News he hated putting on makeup, but it didn't stop there. He also despised the putting on of wardrobe, along with the wardrobe person after takes, taking their lip brush and rubbing down their wardrobe, and the makeup person recombing his hair while he's talking to me. All that sort of fussy hair and makeup and all that stuff, the director said. I think that drove him crazy. Well, it seems that privacy has always been a part of Hackman's life, so it would only be fair that it is respected even in death. And that's it from us today until next time. Thank you for watching.